Hi guys, welcome to another YouTube video of mine. Now this series is a series of lectures that's going to help you perhaps write better answers, be able to comprehend better when you're reading something, and so on and so forth. Which is why this series is called Critical Approaches to Literature. Um, Now, whenever you're talking about any kind of literary criticism or understanding or comprehension, um, the foundations of it, of course, originally are built on philosophers, right? Like Plato, Aristotle, um, Johnson, other major critics who've criticized society in different ways. Uh, then of course there are then of course there the not so famous critiques too, like for example poets like say Robert Bernard Shaw or Hughes, etc., who did criticize other people's work, um, but um, when you're talking about who developed the framework or the basis, then of course it was Plato and Aristotle and those kind of people. So uh, now the thing is that there's often whenever we sit down to study literature, whenever we sit down to understand literature, a question that we often forget to ask ourselves, which we should constantly, is what is literature? It's really easy to say that, literature is people trying to fathom life in two words. But just like there is no one interpretation in literature, there is no one answer to what is literature. There is, of course, significance in Plato's objections to poetry via his philosophies. There is, of course, the Aristotelian idea of catharsis, as well as nemesis in certain ways. But when it comes to critical judgment, it's really important to understand that any and all kinds of critical judgment are only actually good if they were to consider all factors. Now, I know Edward de Bono's theory of consider all factors is a modern day theory. And also it's something far from literature, right? But at the same time, uh, it's something that sort of intercepts when it comes to literary concepts. Because, again, literature is life, or inspired by life, or life fathomed into words, whatever you would want to say. I think one should often ask themselves this question, especially students of literature should often ask themselves this question, that, excuse me, that what is literature? Another thing is that to illuminate the nature of literature and the nature of criticism also, because of course literature is anything written down, right? Like twinkle twinkle little stars, or twinkle twinkle little star, how I wonder what you are. It's a couplet, whatever you want to call it. It's a couplet. Now, to be able to understand that, as well as if there is any kind of criticism on it, to be able to understand that, you need to know a lot of other things, which is why to be able to illuminate both the nature of literature and its criticism, and I've used the word illuminate because you're sort of shedding light, right, with regards to other aspects of the world or life. It is important to be well read, won't be the right term here, because I mean you can never be well read enough to understand or grasp certain concepts, or to be able to fully criticize any piece of literature the right way. But to be able to still try and understand a piece of work, it's important that you keep reading, you keep referring, you keep consuming, because that consumption is going to add to your knowledge of, like, say, twinkle twinkle little star, how I wonder what you are. Twinkle, the word twinkle is not just sparkling, right? Sparkling is a synonym of twinkle, yes, but there are also other meanings to twinkle, because twinkle itself can also be taken or used as a pun of something burning, if you were to look at it that way. Because they say that a star is a meteor burning, right? Meteor. I hope that I pronounced that right. Whatever, because my knowledge of the universe is not that expansive, which is why I tend to not criticize literature from that angle. But you get what I mean? And so the more you can read other pieces of criticism before attempting an exam, before reading a book, it helps you understand the book better. Because what do we often do? Like, in regular life, I've seen people often, you would recommend them a book, they would read it once, and then they'd just form an opinion about it, and they'd be like, oh, this is how it was. But that's not how you understand or learn to appreciate a book. That's why it's called learning to appreciate a book, right? Because you learn to appreciate a book, and, like, what about all these connoisseurs, right? That appreciate the finest wine and art and this and that. It's all acquired taste, right? Similarly, with books, it's the same thing. You learn to appreciate it. And how do you learn to appreciate it? By opening your mind. And how will you open your mind? Not by telling yourself, oh, now I need to be open-minded. You will only learn to open your mind. You will only be able to open your mind if you were to be able to refer to other sources too. If you were to be able to know other ways of criticism, other pieces of criticism, other texts that you can cross-refer to. So when you're reading something as basic as Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, you know that, okay, fine, here twinkle can mean sparkling, but it can also mean burning. How I wonder what you are. It can also mean, if you were to take Shakespeare context here, it can also mean admiration for the lover. So there are all of those things which one must consider and one must know of to be able to understand literature properly, to be able to write an answer properly, to be able to because I mean I've often seen people, what they do is, if there's an exam, just memorize past paper answers and go and write that. But that will not help you be able to understand it. Sometimes, yes, with some exams, the rubrics are so flawed, sorry to say that, but the rubrics are so flawed that you may end up acing the exam. I'm not saying you won't. There are possible times when you may end up acing an exam because the rubrics are so flawed that it will grade you based on your memory only. But that's not what literature is about. And other times, of course, if you were to be able to understand the critical approaches to literature, you may be able to do better. And so that's why I decided to start this series of lecture alongside, so that for anybody who's about to sit in a literature exam, for anybody who's trying to study literature, for anybody who reads and wants to understand or learn to appreciate what they're reading, but mainly for people who are about to sit in an exam, of course, they're able to get some help from this and able to grasp on concepts, themes, etc., without having to memorize anything, and be able to write good, comprehensive answers. That's about it, I guess, for this lecture, and I will obviously be continuing on this one. I think we'll divide the series in philosophical inquiry, practical criticism, and literary criticism, as well as its related disciplines. So the series would also, of course, entail multiple lectures. If you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, as well as subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments below, and yeah, press the bell icon to stay updated, so that whichever category you're waiting on with regards to, you are updated instantly whenever